Hello and welcome back from Top of the Wall. My name is Mason Up, and today we are playing Yisan, the Wanderer Bard. Victory Anthem is what I'm calling this deck. I actually have a name this time other than my last deck. Forgot to put the name in until after. And what we are trying to do here is we're trying to play some of our one-drop mana dorks or some of our fast mana cards, trying to get Yisan out as early as possible. Usually we can get him out on turn 2 and then start tapping him on turn 3. And we have a bunch of little elves here that can help us, well, elves and an insect and a fairy or two that can help us untap Yisan an extra time each turn. And we can end up winning the game with a Craterhoof Behemoth that we tutor out with Yisan by turn 5 is usually if we're going right for the combo and trying to race. We usually win the game on turn 5. We also have the ability to actually stop and grab things like our Thought-Knot Seer, or grab something like our Ravenous Slime, or a little Phyrexian Revoker here as some kind of disruption. Also Caustic Caterpillar for a little extra removal. We can end up stopping, grabbing these cards on our way to go and disrupt our opponent while we're still racing them, so we slow them down and still have our ability to keep propelling ourselves forward in the game. We can stop, grab things like Eternal Witness, Scavenging Ooze. We have a ton of different toolbox cards for this deck and things to disrupt our opponent in between trying to accelerate ourselves with something like a Priest of Titania, another one of our mana dorks, or a Elvish Visionary to bounce it repeatedly with the Wirewood Symbiote. Now, aside from all of these creatures in the deck, we also have some other ways of slowing down our opponent, like Trinisphere, Tanglewire, Static Orb, Winter Orb, Thorn of Amethyst, Sphere of Resistance, and a Root Maze here to mess with the lands and artifacts. It does slow us down too, but we do have a lot of mana dorks in the deck that tap for a massive amount of mana the next turn that we have them out anyway. So it's not as big of a deal for us. Then to go along with all of this stuff, we have a bunch of tutors to go along with all of these things. Our good old Green Sun Zenith, Traverse the Ulvenwald, Natural Order. All of our sorcerers are tutors. We also got the Summoner's Pact and a Worldly Tutor as another additional copy of every single creature in the deck, which is important because when we have something like a Priest of Titania or a Karametra's Acolyte that taps for a lot of mana depending on our board state, we can actually end up drawing into, let's say, a Staff of Domination and then going infinite immediately because it can end up producing sometimes 7-8 mana per tap. As long as it's more than 5 mana, we end up netting positive mana and resetting we reset our one creature that taps for all that mana. So we can untap Staff of Domination, untap the creature, retap the creature to reactivate the Staff of Domination to untap them, and we always net mana with the Karametra's Acolyte or the Priest of Titania. So we can end up just going infinite, drawing our entire deck, playing out everything in our deck with all the mana and all the cards, gain infinite life too, just for giggles, and then Craterhoof them anyway as our kind of second win condition. Now, on this whole Yisan trail, there are quite a few other cards that help us ramp in different ways, like the Sakura Tribe Scout, which goes great with Azusa, Lost but Seeking, and our Oracle of Moldiah. All of these actually help us work out how to play Quirion Ranger, repeatedly use it, make our land drops repeatedly to continue untapping Yisan, and still have our mana the next turn available to us when returning multiple forests to our hand per turn. Plus, these abilities do say use once per turn, but I want to point out something very important. Temur Sabertooth returns that creature to our hand. Then when we replay it, we can use its ability immediately, and it resets the creature, and it forgets that card was used earlier this turn because it's technically an additional instance of it being on the battlefield. So we can actually untap Yisan again, which is how we can end up in 3 turns putting 8 lore counters on him. And we have all these creatures that care about lands. So why not add like a whole land package to the deck? You know, the typical competitive land package that you play in any competitive commander deck. You play all of the fetch lands that you can. You play Strip Mine, you play Wasteland, and I also included Ghost Quarter. And because we're super creature heavy, you know, Gaia's Cradle, a bunch of forests because we're green. Dryad Arbor because we got Green Sun Zenith. Now, we also got Tomb of Yurgmoth to make sure Maze of Ith can tap for mana, and Dark Depths can also tap for mana. And the Wirewood Lodge is just another way to untap and get a little extra mana off of some of our other elves that might tap for more than one. And then don't forget we have the Thespian stage for the Dark Depths to potentially allow us to go off and create the 2020 relatively early. And because we have the lands package, I felt that it made I felt like it was important to include Ramanamp Excavator. It's essentially a Crucible Worlds on a body, and we can tutor it with Yisan relatively easily and always consistently. So I figured that it would be a good idea to have him in there, just in case we do draw into Strip Mine. We can play Ramanamp Excavator, replay the Strip Mine out of our graveyard every single turn, and just start grinding out our opponent that way. All the while we're attacking the mana base, we're still untapping Yisan, still playing around with Yisan, and using him to win the game. There are some other tutor cards in here, like the Crop Rotation and like the Elvish Reclaimer to go fetch us more lands, plus all of the tutor cards that can go get Elvish Reclaimer to use Elvish Reclaimer as a repeatable Crop Rotation, essentially, and continue getting the cards that we need to either get Dark Depths or start strip mining our opponent out and start winning the game that way. Burgeoning and Exploration to play extra lands, and there are a few other ways for us to play the game depending on who we are playing, which brings us to the sideboard and some of the other cards in our deck. There are a lot of grindy matchups in competitive Commander, and I felt like if we're playing combo, and since we do have essentially a value commander, Yisan is a card that cheats on mana cost and gets us card advantage for relatively little to nothing, and it's all packaged into one card. So it's really easiest for us to switch to value mode. And with all of that in mind, I wanted to include Sylvan Library and Miri's Guile, also the Tireless Tracker in our sideboard, because Tireless Tracker is very strong, and so is Runic Artemisor in certain matchups when our opponent is also playing all of the lands, all of the fetch lands that they can. Like if they're on 2 colors, they're playing 6 of the 10 fetch lands, I believe. Is that right? No, 7 of the 10 fetch lands, I believe. And I feel like that was a pretty good thing to have. And if they're also on more than one color, we have Hall of Gemstones to mess up their mana base. If they're on blue, we got Choke and Carpet of Flowers. There are a lot of blue decks, and some of those blue decks are the Teferi Chain Veil blue decks that like to untap all of their artifacts, untap the Chain Veil, and then use Teferi's ability again to continue to just untap their artifacts, generate a bunch of mana, go through their library really fast. So we have the Null Rod to stop them from activating the Chain Veil and a lot of their artifacts, like Basalt Monolith. We have Dampening Sphere to mess with other people's Gaia's Cradles and Cabal Coffers if we feel that they're all in on Gaia's Cradle or Cabal Coffers, or abusing their mana base, or perhaps a High Tide deck of sorts, or if they're just storming off in general. We don't really want them to do that. We got Veil of Summer to fight the blue-black decks. It's just an easy 2-for-1 for 1 green mana. I felt like it was an easy card to throw in and to replace if we felt like some of our removal was not up to par. Tormod's Crypt to fight graveyards immediately. Any kind of dredge shenanigan. Just 0 mana card. Almost immediately we can play it and mess up their first few turns just like that. Heroic Intervention is just a way to fight removal that they might side in that is really good against us or very strong. Or perhaps they're planning to wrath away all of our stuff. We can include heroic intervention to fight perhaps their Wrath of God that they're putting in, or their Cataclysm, this or that, and essentially turn the Cataclysm into a one-sided card, which is always good. But don't be afraid to fire off heroic intervention a little early sometimes. You're a lot of times they don't have a board wipe. Competitive Commander, there isn't a lot of board wipes, not as much as regular Commander. It's easier to just race out your own combo than spend time trying to worry about wrathing away their combo. And a lot of times decks will rely on their speed to outrace you. And you know, I might be actually wrong about everything that I said. I might be wrong to put half these cards in the deck. And if you think so, you should tell me down below, or if I've made a mistake, tell me about it. And you should check out some of these other cards that I have down here on the side in this maybe board section. Some of these cards are pretty decent, but I didn't feel like they were the right call for the deck. I didn't feel like they were the best thing. Maybe you think Platinum Empyrean is obviously the best card in the maybe section, and you just think that it deserves to be in here over the entire stacks package. You think that perhaps we could really use that Ancient Tomb or Gem Mine or whatever. And if you do think that, you should tell me about it. You should check out this deck on tapped.net, get your own copy of the deck on tapped.net, and start modifying it yourself, and play around with your own Yisan. Play around, make your own kind of combination, and don't forget to check me out later, because I will be playing Yisan against the Teferi, deck and some of the other competitive Commander decks, and putting it on my channel as a kind of gameplay thing that I wanted to try for a while. It might take a minute. It should be out later this week before Sunday. Thanks for watching, and coming in for that face touch.